Every single day you have two choices: to be distracted by the noise of the world, or to direct your mind like a sculptor shaping clay. The difference between living a life by design or by default is decided in those quiet, invisible moments where you choose what to focus on. The world outside may try to pull your attention in 1,000 directions, but the truth is simple: where your focus goes, your life flows. What you entertain inwardly, the pictures you hold, the words you whisper, the feelings you nurture, eventually take form in the outer world. Your inner dialogue is not a meaningless stream of thoughts. It is the rehearsal room of your future. When you speak to yourself as though you already possess what you desire, you breathe life into it. But when you doubt, complain, or dwell on lack, you give power to the very reality you wish to escape. Every desire you hold asks you for one thing: to live as if it is already yours. Not someday, not if everything goes right, but now. By embodying the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you align your state of being with the outcome you long for. Circumstances may seem to contradict your vision. The outer world may delay, test, or tempt you to give up, but persistence in your chosen focus is stronger than appearances. What you consistently assume within yourself must one day appear without. And above all, remember this: you are not at the mercy of the world. You are the cause. You are the operant power. Each day, by focusing on yourself, on your inner state, your imagination, your assumptions, you are writing the script of your tomorrow. Imagination creates reality is more than just a poetic phrase. It is the fundamental truth behind how life unfolds. Every experience you encounter, every success or struggle, every relationship and opportunity is in some way a reflection of the pictures and feelings you have allowed to take root within yourself. The mind is not simply a recorder of external events. It is a projector that casts outward what is continuously impressed upon it. What you picture, and more importantly, what you feel in relation to those pictures, gradually crystallizes into the circumstances you call life. When you close your eyes and imagine, you are not engaging in a meaningless daydream. You are shaping substance, molding energy, and rehearsing the conditions that will eventually surround you. The unseen realm of imagination is the workshop of creation. The mistake most people make is dismissing it as fantasy or childish indulgence, when in truth it is the power through which reality is born. Every invention, every work of art, every change in history began as a picture held firmly in someone's mind before it ever touched the physical world. If that principle holds true for great discoveries and cultural shifts, it holds just as true for the details of your personal life. What you repeatedly picture with conviction becomes a seed planted in the subconscious. This subconscious does not argue, debate, or evaluate whether a picture is possible. It simply accepts what is impressed upon it with feeling and sets about reorganizing external conditions to match. You may imagine wealth, health, or joy, and if that picture is saturated with genuine feeling, life begins moving silently behind the scenes to mirror that inner state. By the same law, if you continually picture lack, fear, or failure and allow yourself to feel those states deeply, life will obediently manifest conditions that validate those assumptions. The key is not merely visualizing like an idle fantasy, but embodying the feeling of the picture as though it were already real. The mind creates most powerfully when thought and emotion are fused into a living experience. If you see yourself in imagination walking through the doors of your dream home, feel the texture of the walls, breathe the atmosphere, and hear the sound of your footsteps on the floor. That scene is impressed as a living memory into your inner being. To the subconscious, there is no difference between what you vividly imagine and what you physically encounter. This is why the inner rehearsal, when practiced with feeling, becomes the blueprint for outer manifestation. Consider how often people imagine unconsciously. A person worried about an upcoming meeting rehearses disaster in their mind, imagining rejection, failure, or embarrassment, and then feels those emotions as though they were true. Without realizing it, they have just impressed the subconscious with a reality that will seek expression. Another person continually pictures arguments with loved ones, mentally living through conflict, and soon finds that conflict manifesting outwardly. This is the principle of imagination creating reality in action, though used in ignorance. The power is always working. The only question is whether it is directed deliberately or allowed to run on autopilot fueled by fear and doubt. To use imagination consciously, discipline of attention is required. It means refusing to dwell on images that contradict your desired outcome and persistently returning to the inner picture that reflects your chosen reality. Even when the outer world shows no sign of change, the inner picture must be held with persistence and faith. The visible world lags behind the invisible, what you hold within eventually catches up in the form of events, opportunities, and circumstances. The gardener does not dig up the seed each day to check its progress. They water, nurture, and trust the process. So too must you trust the imaginal act, knowing it has already taken root. This understanding places the responsibility squarely on the individual. You are never a passive victim of life, but always the creator through the use of imagination. If your current circumstances are undesirable, the remedy is not found in frantic outer effort alone, but in reshaping the pictures you dwell on within. By changing what you consistently imagine and feel, you change the very soil from which your future grows. This shift may not happen instantly, but persistence transforms imagination into fact. The invisible picture becomes visible reality, just as surely as night turns into day. Imagination is not a casual tool, but the most powerful force available to human beings. To live unconsciously is to let it create haphazardly, scattering seeds of fear and doubt that blossom into unwanted conditions. To live consciously is to take command of imagination, to picture deliberately the life you choose, to feel yourself already in possession of it, and to persist until reality bends to match the unseen vision you carry within. Every day presents countless moments to practice this law in the quiet before sleep, in the idle moments of thought, in the way you respond inwardly to challenges. Each moment of imagination is a brushstroke on the canvas of your future. Inner dialogue shapes destiny because every word you whisper silently to yourself is a seed being sown in the soil of your subconscious. These inner conversations may feel private and harmless, but they are the scripts from which the play of your life is performed. What you repeat inwardly with feeling, whether in the form of self-criticism, encouragement, doubt, or faith, eventually gathers weight and momentum until it takes form in the outer world. Life does not merely respond to the actions you take or the circumstances around you. It mirrors back to you the continuous flow of dialogue you hold with yourself when no one is watching. Most people underestimate the power of their thoughts because they seem fleeting and intangible. Yet it is precisely those repetitive whispers, those inner arguments, those daydreams and quiet assumptions that create the texture of tomorrow. Consider the person who continually tells themselves they are unlucky, unworthy, or destined to struggle. Though these words are never spoken aloud, they are rehearsed in the mind with emotion. Over time, life seems to validate these assumptions, not because fate is cruel, but because the subconscious accepts those inner statements as truth and organizes reality to confirm them. In the same way, the person who persistently affirms inwardly that they are capable, blessed, and worthy of success begins to see life aligned with those inner claims. The subconscious mind is impressionable and obedient. It does not distinguish between an inner dialogue of confidence and one of fear. It simply accepts what is fed to it most consistently. This is why changing outer conditions without addressing inner conversations often leads to frustration. Someone may work tirelessly toward a goal, but continue to narrate inwardly that they will fail or that they do not deserve the outcome. Despite the external effort, the inner dialogue acts as the louder command, and life reflects the unspoken belief rather than the forced action. Inner dialogue is the rehearsal of destiny. The quiet arguments you have with yourself about your future partner, your career, or your finances are not mere fantasies. They are the blueprint from which reality is constructed. If you continually picture yourself defending your limitations, imagining rejection, or revisiting painful memories, you are giving those scenarios life in your subconscious. Eventually, opportunities appear to confirm your inner state. People behave in ways that echo your assumptions, and circumstances align with the dialogue you have been entertaining. The law is impartial. What you hold within, you meet without. Awareness of this law brings both responsibility and empowerment. Responsibility, because you can no longer blame life for outcomes that echo your inner voice. Empowerment, because by changing your inner dialogue, you change the trajectory of your life. This change does not require external validation or visible evidence at first. It requires persistence in directing your inner conversations toward the desired outcome, even when appearances seem to contradict it. Each time you catch yourself in a conversation of fear or doubt and replace it with one of faith and fulfillment, you are planting new seeds in the soil of your subconscious. These seeds, once nourished by repetition and emotion, grow into the experiences that fill your days. The quality of your life is shaped not by what you wish for in passing, but by what you talk about inwardly day after day. Imagine a person preparing for a job interview. If inwardly they picture themselves fumbling, being rejected, or appearing inadequate, they enter the situation already defeated, and their energy communicates insecurity. But if they rehearse inwardly a dialogue of confidence, seeing themselves chosen, welcomed, and valued, they step into the moment with a state that invites that reality. The inner voice becomes the outer experience. Your inner dialogue also determines how you interpret what happens to you. Two people can face the same event and create entirely different futures depending on their inner speech. One person loses a job and continually tells themselves it proves they are a failure. Soon, life reflects that belief with more struggle. Another loses the same job but inwardly declares it an opening for something greater. Life then organizes circumstances to match that assumption. The difference lies not in the event but in the inner dialogue following it. To transform destiny, discipline of inner speech is required. This discipline is not about force but about awareness and redirection. When you catch yourself rehearsing defeat, stop and reframe the conversation. Speak inwardly as though the best has already happened, as though you are already living in the fulfillment of your desire. By persisting in this new dialogue, you teach your subconscious a new pattern, and life inevitably bends to reflect it. This is not empty positive thinking, but the deliberate use of the creative power inherent in consciousness. Every moment of inner dialogue is an act of creation. Each assumption, each silent conversation, each whispered phrase within your mind is either empowering your destiny or undermining it. The future is not written in the stars, but in the constant flow of your inner speech. By taking control of these conversations, by choosing to dwell on what affirms rather than what denies, you align yourself with the reality you wish to inhabit. Inner dialogue shapes destiny because it is the law of expression in action, the unseen cause behind every seen effect, the silent author scripting the story you are destined to live. Feeling is the bridge between the invisible world of thought and the tangible reality you experience. Thoughts alone pass quickly through the mind like clouds across the sky, but when they are charged with genuine emotion, they gain weight and power. It is not the casual idea that takes root in the subconscious, but the thought that is felt, the idea infused with emotion. When thought and feeling merge, they become a living impression, one that the subconscious accepts as fact and begins to externalize. This is why feelings are not incidental, they are the creative substance of manifestation. Consider the countless thoughts you entertain in a single day. Most drift by unnoticed, leaving little to no impact because they lack emotional force. Yet the thoughts you dwell upon with strong emotion, fear, excitement, gratitude, or love, become etched into the subconscious mind. That impression then serves as the command that life obeys. The subconscious is not swayed by logic or argument, it responds to the intensity of feeling. A statement spoken without feeling remains a hollow phrase, but the same statement saturated with conviction and emotion becomes a decree that reality bends to fulfill. This is why people often notice that their greatest fears seem to materialize more easily than their casual hopes. Fear is a strong emotion, and when it fuses with thought, it creates a powerful impression on the subconscious. Someone who continually worries about losing a job, imagines the scenes of dismissal, and feels the anxiety as though it were already happening, is rehearsing that outcome with emotional energy. The subconscious, receiving that feeling, accepts it as truth and orchestrates conditions to match it. On the other hand, a person who chooses to feel the security and joy of being valued, supported, and prosperous impresses the subconscious with a different reality, and soon circumstances rearrange to reflect it. Feeling is the bridge because it carries the invisible image of thought into the world of form. Without feeling, imagination remains a faint outline. With feeling, imagination becomes substance. To imagine yourself in a new home, in a fulfilling relationship, or in perfect health is a start, but to feel the joy, gratitude, and satisfaction of already having it is the true act of creation. The subconscious does not distinguish between the scene lived in imagination with deep emotion and the scene experienced outwardly. To it, both are realities, and what is impressed deeply enough inwardly must express outwardly. This understanding places responsibility on how you choose to feel each day. Many drift through life letting circumstances dictate their emotions. They feel happy only when things appear to go well and fall into despair when they face obstacles. But this is to misunderstand the bridge of feeling. Circumstances are not the cause of emotion. They are the result of emotions already impressed upon the subconscious. By reversing the process, by deliberately choosing to feel now what you wish to experience later, you move from being a passive reactor to being the creator of your reality. For example, if you desire financial abundance, the outer world may tempt you to feel lack and worry because the numbers in your bank account seem small. Yet if you can close your eyes and feel the relief, security, and joy of abundance as though it were already present, you cross the bridge. That feeling becomes the evidence the subconscious accepts, and life eventually delivers conditions to mirror it. The world responds not to your wishful thoughts, but to the feelings you dwell in. Feeling is also the bridge because it is the state that connects the present with the future. To feel the desired outcome now is to occupy the state of the wish fulfilled before it materializes. In that state, you live from the end, and living from the end is the secret to bringing it about. When thought says, I want this someday, but feeling says, it is mine now, the subconscious hears the feeling, not the wish. And since the subconscious creates according to what it accepts as true, the outcome follows the feeling. This is why persistence in feeling is so vital. One moment of imagining with emotion is powerful, but repeated dwelling in that state makes it inevitable. Each time you return to the feeling of fulfillment, you deepen the impression, strengthening the bridge until it must carry you across. The outer world may appear unchanged at first, but reality is already shifting in unseen ways. The bridge of feeling ensures that what is deeply impressed inwardly will find expression outwardly. It is also important to understand that negative feelings are not enemies but signals. They reveal the state you are currently dwelling in. If you feel fear, envy, or despair, it is a sign you are impressing the subconscious with outcomes you do not wish to live. Recognizing this gives you the power to shift. Instead of indulging those emotions, you can deliberately turn your attention to the state you prefer and generate the feeling of already having it. Gratitude, joy, and love are not just pleasant emotions. They are creative forces that mold reality when fused with thought. Feeling is the bridge between imagination and experience, between desire and fulfillment, between the invisible and the visible. Every time you choose to feel as though your wish is already realized, you are crossing that bridge, leaving behind the limitations of the present, and entering the reality of the fulfilled desire. What begins as a simple act of feeling soon becomes a new state of being, and that state inevitably calls forth the circumstances that match it. By understanding and practicing this law, you hold the key to transforming every aspect of your life through the conscious use of feeling fused with thought. Live from the end is the principle that urges you to inhabit, inwardly and outwardly, the state of your fulfilled desire before it is visible in the world of facts. It is not about waiting for external proof before allowing yourself to believe, but about assuming the reality of what you long for so completely that the subconscious accepts it as present fact. Once accepted, the unseen intelligence within begins to reorganize circumstances, people, and events to reflect the inner state you have chosen. To live from the end is to act, think, and feel not as though you are striving towards something far away, but as though you are already in possession of it. The common mistake most people make is to live in the state of wanting. They desire something yet continually affirm to themselves that they do not have it. Every thought, word, and feeling is flavored with lack. They imagine their goal in the future, always out of reach, always depending on some external condition to be fulfilled first. But to live from the end means to collapse the sense of time, to claim now what the mind insists is later. It is to think and act as though your wish is already true, regardless of the evidence around you. This is not self-deception or empty pretending, it is creative alignment. The subconscious is not moved by the logic of facts, but by the conviction of states. If you dwell in the state of, I will have, the subconscious hears, I do not have. If you dwell in the state of, I already am, the subconscious hears, I am, and life conforms. The world you see outside is always a shadow of the state you occupy inside. To change the shadow, you must change the state. Living from the end begins in imagination. You picture yourself in the scene that implies the fulfillment of your desire. If it is health, you imagine walking freely, full of vitality, hearing others remark on how well you look. If it is success, you imagine the congratulatory handshake, the words of recognition, the satisfaction of accomplishment. If it is love, you imagine the warmth of companionship, the feeling of being cherished and secure. But the key is not just to see these images. It is to feel them as though they are your current reality. You let the emotions of fulfillment wash over you until you can no longer distinguish between imagination and fact. To the subconscious, they are one and the same. Once the feeling is accepted, you carry it into your daily life. This does not mean you ignore practical responsibilities or refuse to take action. It means that every action is infused with the confidence that comes from knowing your desire is already secured. You no longer strive desperately to make it happen. You live naturally as though it has already happened. This shift in inner posture radiates outward in subtle ways. Through your words, your decisions, your energy. And these outward expressions align with the inner conviction. drawing to you the conditions that match it. Living from the end also changes how you respond to challenges. When difficulties arise, the person living in the state of desire feels defeated because the outer evidence contradicts what they want. But the person living from the end interprets those same difficulties as temporary appearances, powerless against the inner certainty of fulfillment. Their response is not fear but persistence, because they are anchored in a state beyond circumstance. They know that appearances will bend to the conviction they carry, and so they remain unmoved. This principle also dissolves the need for endless waiting. Many people place their dreams on a distant pedestal, saying someday, or when everything is perfect, but someday never arrives because the subconscious is always fed with the state of waiting. By living from the end now, you bring the fulfillment into the present moment. You become the person you wish to be in thought and feeling today, and that state calls forth the corresponding outer life tomorrow. Living from the end requires faith, but faith not as blind hope. It is faith as embodiment, as assumption. You no longer ask whether the desire will come, you rest in the knowing that it is already done. This inner stance has a magnetic effect on reality. People begin to respond to you differently, opportunities appear where none existed, and synchronicities unfold. Life reorganizes itself to match the inner script you have been rehearsing. What seemed impossible or distant suddenly becomes natural and inevitable, because you have already lived it. Within every great achievement in history has been preceded by someone living from the end in their mind before it existed in form. The inventor who saw their creation long before the first model was built, the artist who felt the masterpiece complete before touching the canvas, the leader who envisioned the future of a people before it was visible, all lived from the end. Their persistence in that state eventually turned imagination into fact. The same law applies universally to every individual life. To live from the end is to stop measuring yourself by what is visible, and instead measure yourself by what you have inwardly claimed. It is to treat the imaginal act as reality and refuse to betray it by contradictory inner conversations. Each day becomes a practice of dwelling in the state of fulfillment, regardless of appearances. And each day that state grows stronger, until reality itself cannot help but mirror it back in the form of lived experience. Persistence over circumstances is the quality that separates fleeting wishes from inevitable manifestations. The outer world, with its shifting appearances, often tempts you to abandon your inner vision. You may imagine a fulfilled desire, you may even feel it as though it were real. But when time passes and nothing seems to change, doubt begins to whisper. The mistake is to interpret delay as denial, when in truth delay is only the slow rearrangement of conditions to match the state you have already claimed within. Persistence is the bridge that carries you through the gap between the unseen cause and the visible effect. Every desire begins in the invisible realm of imagination and feeling. That inner act sets the process of manifestation into motion. Yet the visible world is dense and often sluggish in its response. Circumstances appear stubborn, people may behave in ways that contradict your vision, and evidence may seem entirely absent. At such moments, most surrender to appearances. They revise their dream downward, compromise their desire, or abandon it altogether, not realizing that persistence would have eventually bent life to conform. The law is unfailing, but persistence is required to prove it. Persistence does not mean straining with effort or obsessively checking for results. It means remaining loyal inwardly to the state of fulfillment, regardless of what the senses report. It is the refusal to accept outer appearances as the final word. When you persist in seeing yourself as already in possession of what you desire, you anchor yourself in a state that must eventually express itself. Outer facts may contradict you today, but they cannot resist a firmly held inner vision indefinitely. Reality is malleable and obedient to the persistent assumption. History offers countless illustrations of this principle. The inventor who persists through failure after failure eventually brings forth a discovery that transforms the world. The artist who remains faithful to their vision, despite criticism and rejection, eventually creates a masterpiece. The individual who continues to see themselves as prosperous, healthy, or loved, despite evidence to the contrary, eventually draws circumstances into alignment with that vision. The common thread is not luck but persistence, the unyielding refusal to let temporary appearances dictate permanent conclusions. The outer world is like clay, slow to reshape, but pliable under consistent pressure. Each time you return in imagination to the scene of your fulfilled desire, each time you feel it real despite outer contradiction, you are applying pressure to that clay. One moment of persistence may leave only a faint mark, but repeated impressions eventually mold the entire form. The law cannot fail because the subconscious accepts what is consistently impressed upon it. The only variable is whether you persist long enough for the new state to replace the old. To persist requires an inner attitude of faith. Faith is not blind belief but loyalty to an unseen reality. It is the quiet confidence that what you have assumed within must, in time, reveal itself without. This confidence allows you to stand unmoved when others doubt, when circumstances appear hostile, or when delays stretch longer than expected. You know that the seed you planted in imagination is alive and growing, even if no sprout has yet pierced the soil. Just as a farmer persists in watering a seed long before the harvest, you persist in nurturing your inner vision long before outer evidence appears. Persistence also transforms your relationship with obstacles. What once seemed like setbacks become opportunities to deepen your faith. When appearances contradict your vision, you are given the chance to reaffirm your loyalty to the unseen over the seen. Each test strengthens your inner conviction, making the eventual manifestation not only possible but inevitable. The outer world, no matter how solid it appears, is powerless against a consciousness that refuses to yield. Consider how most people live in reverse. They allow outer circumstances to dictate their inner state. If they see success, they feel successful. If they see failure, they feel defeated. But persistence over circumstances inverts this order. It demands that you hold the inner state first and let the outer eventually conform. By persisting in the assumption of fulfillment, you rise above the tyranny of appearances. Life no longer pushes you around, you begin to shape it from within. The great temptation is to give up too soon. Many stand at the threshold of change, but retreat because the outer world has not yet caught up. They assume nothing is happening, when in truth everything is happening invisibly. Persistence is the refusal to dig up the seed to check its growth. It is the trust that what has been impressed must be expressed. Each return to your inner vision strengthens its roots, ensuring that it will one day break through into visibility. Persistence over circumstances is therefore not a matter of force but of fidelity. It is remaining true to your chosen inner reality, regardless of delay, contradiction, or apparent impossibility. It is the recognition that the outer world is but a shadow of your inner state, and shadows cannot resist the light that casts them. By persisting in your inner vision, you bend life itself to match it, proving that the unseen cause is always stronger than the seen effect. You are the operant power, the one through whom life takes its shape and direction. To believe otherwise is to surrender to the illusion that circumstances are stronger than consciousness, that fate is something imposed from outside, that you are merely a passenger being carried along by forces beyond your control. Yet the truth is that life does not happen to you in a random or indifferent way. It responds directly and consistently to the assumptions, imaginal acts, and inner focus you maintain each day. The outer world is a mirror, and the one holding the mirror is always you. The common habit is to think of life as something external, a vast machinery in which you are a small and powerless part. People speak of luck, chance, or destiny as if these forces randomly decide the course of events. But when examined closely, patterns emerge. The person who continually fears misfortune often finds misfortune at their door. The one who expects rejection seems to attract it repeatedly. Conversely, the one who quietly assumes success, who walks in the feeling of being loved or valued, discovers that life arranges itself to validate those assumptions. These are not accidents but responses. Consciousness is the cause and life is the effect. To be the operant power means to accept that your thoughts, feelings, and assumptions are not idle. They are creative acts. Each day you are sowing seeds through the focus of your attention. If you dwell on lack, if you continually affirm that nothing works out for you, if you rehearse failure in your imagination, you are planting seeds of limitation that must bear fruit. If instead you choose to focus on fulfillment, abundance, and possibility, you are planting seeds of growth that must eventually blossom. The soil of life does not discriminate, it grows whatever is planted. The power to choose the seed is yours. Many resist this truth because it places responsibility on the individual. It is easier to believe that others or circumstances or luck are the deciding factors. Yet that belief itself is an assumption, and life responds accordingly. If you assume you are powerless, life obliges by showing you situations where you appear trapped. If you assume you are the operant power, life obliges by opening doors that confirm your inner stance. Your assumption, whether empowering or limiting, is always being echoed in the outer world. Being the operant power does not mean controlling every event directly with conscious will. It means recognizing that your inner state determines the pattern of your experiences. From the state of lack, even abundant opportunities slip through your fingers because you cannot perceive or accept them. From the state of fulfillment, even small openings expand into major breakthroughs because you are aligned with them inwardly. The power is not in micromanaging the details, but in sustaining the inner state that ensures the details unfold in your favor. This principle reveals why focus is so critical. Focus is not merely attention. It is the energy that directs creation. Whatever you focus on expands in your experience. When you dwell on problems, you feed them with energy and they multiply. When you dwell on solutions, you open space for answers to emerge. When you focus on fear, you magnetize experiences that justify it. When you focus on confidence, you radiate strength that life reflects back. Each day, with every thought and feeling you dwell upon, you are choosing the future version of yourself you will meet. To recognize yourself as the operant power is to step out of the role of victim and into the role of creator. Challenges may arise, but you no longer interpret them as signs of defeat. You see them as reflections of past assumptions and opportunities to shift into new states. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you begin to ask, "What within me is this reflecting, and what new state can I assume?" This shift transforms every situation into a chance to reclaim your creative authority. The practice of living as the operant power is simple, but requires persistence. It begins with awareness of your inner conversations. You notice the quiet assumptions you carry, the tone of your self-talk, the images you repeatedly entertain. Instead of letting them drift unconsciously, you guide them deliberately toward the end you desire. You practice imagining as though you are already in possession of your goal. You generate the feelings of fulfillment now before any outer change appears. And you persist in this stance until life reorganizes itself in response. This way of living is not dependent on outer validation. You do not wait for conditions to prove your power. You know that conditions are the delayed echo of your inner state. Each day you claim your role as the operant power by choosing what to focus on, what to feel, and what to imagine. In doing so, you write the script of your future, and the world faithfully acts it out. To forget this truth is to drift aimlessly, tossed about by appearances. To remember it is to walk deliberately, shaping reality from within with clarity and confidence. You are not at the mercy of life, you are the source from which life takes its cue. Every assumption is a command, every feeling a blueprint, every focus a seed. To live in awareness of this fact is to harness the creative law consciously, no longer scattering your power but directing it. Life is a mirror that waits only to reflect the state you occupy. And since the state is always chosen within, the power remains forever in your hands. So focus on yourself every day. Guard your thoughts like treasure, speak inwardly with faith, and walk as though your dream is already real. For when you honor the unseen within, the seen world has no choice but to bow before it.